Welcome to this week's episode of the Confetti Hour podcast. I'm your host, Renee Sabo, and this week I'm sitting down with an amazing industry pro. I'm so excited for you guys to get to know him. Some of you may know him and his friendly face from conferences that you may have attended. I am sitting down with Phillip Van Nostrand of Phillip VN Photography. Phillip is based out of New York City with a strong background in weddings, commercial, and lifestyle projects. He is an expert in capturing bright, cinematic lifestyle imagery. He loves to travel and has photographed in over 40 countries. Published in the New York Times, Style Me Pretty, Dwell Magazine, Fortune.com, Brides, Vogue, Huffington Post, Forbes, you name it. Phil's work has been recognized globally. I'm so excited for you guys to get to know Phil. He has such a calm energy, and I absolutely adore him as a human. You guys are going to hear all about his journey, how he got into the world of weddings and photography. And we're also going to be sharing our mindset and takes and tips aways from attending conferences and networking throughout the industry. We'll finish up with what he wishes other vendors knew, and of course, his Confetti Hour confession. All right, without further ado, please help me welcome Phillip. Hi, Phil. Welcome to the podcast. Hi,
Yay!
Phil. Welcome to the Confetti Hour. How are you?
I'm doing great. It's nice to see you.
Good to see you too. I'm so honored to have you. Okay, so to kick us off, I just want you to share about you. I think you have such a fascinating background on how you discovered your love for photography, and just like, how did you get into this industry, and what have you really loved about being in the industry?
Yeah,
loaded questions.
Yeah, this is great. Yeah, I mean, the short answer is basically photography was like the hobby that got out of control, I call it. And so,
oh my gosh, I love that.
I was like a hobbyist photographer for about 6 years, and before I shot my first wedding. But I was in Santa Barbara. I fell in love with travel and photography right at the same time, and kind of wanted to like learn photography to capture my travels better. And then I was taking pictures of flowers and pretty friends and Santa Barbara sunsets and stuff. And then posting on Instagram, or like not Instagram, posting on Facebook a lot. And a friend of a friend asked if I could shoot their friend's wedding for $500. And so that was my very first wedding 14 years ago.
It probably felt like a lot of money at the time though, right? Like
for me,
like,
it was the most
me?
It was the most money I'd ever made in one day in my life. Yeah. And it was like extraordinary.
That's awesome.
Because I was a teacher, actually. I was teaching middle school math back then.
That's right.
Yeah.
I could see you as a teacher as well. I feel like you like definitely are such a motivating like person, but that's so cool. I love this like hobby turned professional. So what happened at the friend's wedding? Like, how did it go?
It went fine, actually. I don't know. I'm very proud of how I showed up for that first one, because I hired a second photographer who'd done like 10 weddings already. It was like a friend of mine who was also like ahead of me by a year or two. And I went to the wedding space a week beforehand to where we were going to take pictures, just to see what like the sunlight was going to look like at that hour. And I had I read so much, you know what I mean? I just prepared and bought extra lenses and stuff. And so I really tried to make sure that it was a success for me, you know, that there was no like question marks. I didn't just like come in and wing it. And it went great. And we got they were happy that we got hugs. The couple is still married, so I have their anniversary like on my calendar. You know, but I was really proud of how I showed up. So
I mean, I think that's amazing. You had the intuition to do all those things, because a lot of people really do just dive in and they don't take the seriousness of like how to be professional and just like have your craft really down. You know, I speak from a planner's perspective. Like there's just so much that goes into it. So I think it's like they probably felt very taken care of, which is awesome.
Yeah, I think so. It was good. It was really fun. You know, it was the best. At the end of it, I was like, this is amazing. Like, it's like, I think certain personalities work for planning, certain personalities work for DJing, for photography, whatever. That really suited me. You know, it's like almost the same. I don't know how to describe this, but I think photographers have the same energy as like a waiter at a nice fast restaurant where you have to like remember a lot of things, like stay on your feet for a long time, stay like sharp and like personable, and you're like interacting with a lot of different people. It's like a lot of things all at once, and I really love that.
I love that. That's like a good like outlook on it. I never thought about like you do have to be super outgoing and personable.
I think
and like almost like calming and guiding too. So, well,
Yeah.
like what did it look like going from that wedding? Like, did the jobs just like roll in, or was it like a kind of slow grow into this industry?
It was a slow grow for sure. And I was still
Mm.
teaching back then, actually. So I was teaching, I was tutoring, and then the photography was like the first year I did 3 weddings sort of accidentally. And then the next year after that, my intention was to shoot 12 weddings no matter what. Like, so I was just like
Ooh.
advertising on Instagram. I mean, there was no Instagram. I keep saying that. I was advertising on Craigslist, on Facebook, being like
On
last minute.
Craigslist? Like, that's
Yeah.
like old school. I love it.
I was like last minute wedding photographer, name your price. And then I got like these random ass weddings out of that like, for like $1,000 or $500 or whatever it was. It didn't matter to me. I just wanted to build the portfolio
Yeah.
so that I could like have the experience, show some good stuff. And then the next year after that, like really start charging, or like being selective about it.
Yeah. Well, you were hustling. That's what you do at the beginning. Yeah.
And it was
I
good.
feel like it's funny because I always thought Instagram's been here forever too. So when you said that, I was like, yeah, that's normal. But you're right. Like back in the day, like I found my roommates on Craigslist when I moved here to Boston.
Yeah.
Like that's just what you did. But now you would like post on Facebook or something. So
yeah, you could do all of it.
Yeah.
Yeah. So anyways, it was
that's cool.
It was like slow but steady. And then since then I've been doing about 12 to 15 weddings a year. I shoot a lot of other stuff besides weddings, but that's kind of what.
Yeah. And you also have grown like some associate photographers, correct? So you run a team, which I think is awesome.
Yeah.
And I guess kind of share too, like I know you moved from the West Coast to the East Coast. Do you feel like that changed a lot of like how you developed your photography, like style and skills? Like, has it been great to be in New York?
Yeah, it has definitely been great to be in New York. I grew up in Santa Barbara, so that's where I had my start. And
which is also amazing. It's like so beautiful out there.
Very much. But I was like a local photographer, like Santa Barbara is pretty luxury in people's minds, but there's also like just a lot of locals who are getting married at the courthouse and the beach and the park and stuff. And so those were the weddings that I was doing.
Okay.
Was like my friends' weddings kind of thing.
Yeah.
And I think when I moved to New York, it really opened up for me like what is possible. I think I had like a sort of an upper limit of what I thought luxury was, or what I thought was like, in the realm of possibility, like $100 an hour jobs is great, or you know, but I don't know. I'm doing like $1,000 an hour jobs in New York now. It's crazy. But and there really is no limit to like what people are willing to pay, kind of. And I don't know. I'm really, really glad I moved here because it really opened up my eyes to like thinking way bigger than myself.
Yeah, I get that. I mean, I grew up in Ohio and came to Boston and kind of had that similar feel just because, well, I knew I wanted that. And I think the industry changes a lot too. So the cool thing is being in cities, like I feel that change earlier on, I guess. And I really do think the possibilities are endless. So it is exciting. I'm impressed by the brand you've built. Like, I feel like everyone knows Phil. Everyone's likely met you at a conference or something.
Sure.
But that's a huge testament to you putting yourself out there and being a big, leader in the community. So to transition a little bit into our topic, how has it been getting to know the community, and like when did you start getting involved with networking and going to conferences?
Yeah, I think even before I moved to New York, I had some mentors in Santa Barbara, and I kept saying like, I want to shoot luxury weddings. Like I had this idea of like what it was that I wanted to do, and they're like, oh, you got to go to Engage Summit, which is like this like super high end luxury conference. Like it's the conference for luxury weddings and stuff. And that was, in my first 3 or 4 years of taking pictures, I was very poor and scrappy. Like, I don't know how to describe how I lived, but it's like a little embarrassing in some ways. 'Cause I lived like in a converted garage in someone's backyard. And like, I had like a 1991 Buick Century that was used. And I was like earning a teacher salary, which was $36,000 a year, $3,000 a month before taxes. And I was just like really being scrappy about so much. And so the price point for this conference was like way out of my realm, At that time it was like $3,000 or $3,500. And before that I had only gone to like $100 conference in Vegas. And
I mean,
so
it's a huge investment. Like,
I
and
don't
I know
even
it's
think I
only
had,
grown.
yeah, I didn't even have that much money in my bank account. So,
Yeah.
so I moved to answer your question, like I moved to New York. I started networking in like kind of local, I heard about like, I don't know, I had like some wedding industry friend who's like, oh, there's this meetup that's happening in Brooklyn or whatever. And I'd go to these things and they were cool little gatherings. And I met some of my friends that I'm still friends with today, but
Nice.
I finally took the jump and went to Engage in 2016. So for 3 years after I moved to New York. And then I realized that there was this whole other level of networking that was sort of happening above me. And like, this is going to sound snobby, but I don't know how else to say it. Like networking in Brooklyn, kind of. I was like, Brooklyn, you know, there's like,
I get it. You're staying local, I
it
guess
was
you could
like,
say
yeah,
that,
it was like mass, it was like middle market kind of networking people and
Right.
vendors and stuff, which is cool and good. And like, but going to Engage was like, oh, there's like this thing called WIPA, and that's where like a lot of the Engage people were networking, or like there's these like parties that you kind of have to be invited to if you know the people. And so there, I realized that like if I looked up, there was this other group that was networking on top of us that was like in Manhattan and doing these bigger things. And so I just sort of like slowly but steadily like offered to shoot stuff for free, or I heard about something and I like asked if I could shoot it, and I like shoot people's birthdays for free, and I just like did so much to like get my name on those lists. It wasn't easy, you know. I remember like, sorry, I'm talking too long, but
no, you're not. I'm like, I'm agreeing. I'm like nodding my head. It's not easy. I'm still doing that, right? So
there was like 2 or 3 years there where I was like, people, I would see pictures afterwards of like friends that I had, or people were at these things. I was like, oh, what is that? Like, how do I had like a list of like when parties were happening. So the next year I could like ask ahead of time if I could get
invited or to be a part of it. Yeah.
Until I finally like had a, you know, like had shown up to enough that people like thought to invite me instead of like me asking. But there was a big push for like a while there. You know, I remember very distinctly being like, oh, how do I get into like the Love Party by Marcia Selden on Valentine's Day? Like, I don't know, you know?
I love them. Well, I mean, I actually love that you brought this up, because I think so many people just think like they should be invited to everything. And I do think there's a lot of work that goes into it. Like, I remember when I was starting, not even starting, I'd been in business for like 4 years and I wasn't invited to some like local planner events. And I'm like, how am I not being invited? You know, I'm working on these weddings in the venues that a lot of these other planners are working in, blah, 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 in the same budgets. And I think the thing that I love so much about you and what I've learned from knowing you is how goal oriented you are. And like, you just don't give up. So I like love that you said you write it down and you're like, I'm going to remember next year to put myself out there and try to go. And I do that as well now because I've seen you do that. And I think it's important to kind of, just keep putting yourself out there, and eventually you'll get to where you want to be. And I try not to also take for granted the invites that I get now that I wanted so badly 4 years ago.
Yeah.
Because I do think you're always going to want the next level, right? You're always going to want more. At least I think we might be like that. But I always try to be grateful and go to the everything. And I feel like you go to so many things. Like I love it. What do you get out of going to a wide variety of like conferences, workshops, you know, just being there in the community, even like WIPA chapters, you know?
Sure, yeah. I mean, we talked about this just briefly before this call, but last year I ended up at like, I think it was 14 conferences that I attended like 8 of them, and then photographed 2 of them, spoke at 2, you know, so I ended up being at like 14 conferences throughout the year.
Yeah.
And I pared down a little bit this year. It's going to be closer to 10 or something, but still a lot. In the early days, I went to 1 a year and it was Engage, and that was like enough. But only in the last like few years, I started exploring around a little bit. What do I get out of them? You know, I have to say, like, this is not for everybody. If you're introverted or a little shy or like more artist, less like extrovert, then I don't think you need to go to everything like I do, but I am extroverted and I love people and I love my friends, and I kind of have a little bit of like golden retriever energy in some ways. And so,
oh my God, I literally think that about you. I'm so glad you know it.
yeah. And so it suits me. So when I hear about something like, I want to go to that, like, how can I get to that? And, or at least once,
Yeah.
just to check it out. And so, when you're with the Boston WIPA chapter, when I know that you're doing something and I like you and I want to support you, like, okay, maybe I'll work this into my calendar and I'll spend a day in Boston. I could go for 12 hours and like attend this party and sort of show face. And the point of all of that is I really, really strongly believe that like we get hired when we are top of mind, especially photographers,
Yes.
Yeah. And so it takes a lot of work to stay top of mind in front of like for 500 people or 1,000 people that you've met over the years. And so for me, showing up is like the easiest way to like see somebody, remind them that I'm still like alive and thriving and hustling or whatever. And I think Bob Conte has given me what you kind of just said. Like it's like, man, you're everywhere, And I like that for some reason. Like, I like to be everywhere. I'd rather be that. I think it's very easy to, if you stopped going to things, that people would forget about you in 1 year. And it'd be like, oh, where's
It's so true. Yeah. I do think, well, and like this industry is so built on relationships and partnerships. And sometimes we just want to get to know each other in a setting that is a little bit more casual. And I do think that that's what these conferences can offer. And like, even just us, like we've talked about how we look forward to working together in the future. We have yet to, I know we will. And that's because we've seen each other at a lot of events and we've grown like our friendship and our, like I've learned so much about you just as like a photographer and an artist, but we would never have done that if I hadn't seen you at multiple events and likewise. Right. And then, it's just, it takes time to build those relationships and for people to be top of mind. And, it's funny, like as a lot of my listeners know now, I rebranded and have a business partner this year. And we, are working on all our marketing. But the biggest thing with the new brand is we were like, we have to just keep showing up to things. Like, I just think you have to stay top of mind and people need to like hear what you're doing or else they move on, right? Like genuine conversations at these events last longer in your head than an Instagram post. So I love that.
I think it's important to remember maybe, I think for people that are like starting out or like in the first 5 years of their career, that like at the very, very, very top, if you're trying to get into the luxury world, luxury folks like to work with people that they like they could work with anybody in the world. And so if they're going to be like doing these like big kick-ass weddings or events that require like a lot of stress, and they want to be surrounded by people that they love and like. And so for the most part, the planner, are hiring vendors that you like. Like you don't want someone who's a talented photographer, but an asshole. Like it's just not worth your time or headache. So
it is actually like so true. And I think that like, it's not just because I want to work with my friends. Like, obviously I love working with people I enjoy, but it's also like a trust factor that comes from it. Like, I feel I can trust you. And if I am frazzled, like you're going to support as a team player and not like make my job harder. We're all one team. And I think that's where people like, that's exactly where it comes from. Like we like working with our friends because we have that trust with each other. And so it's great.
So, and going to conferences and networking events builds, it's not for business, you're building relationships. That's literally what networking is for me. It's relationship building. It's not, I don't have business cards. I like, every time people ask me, I'm like, sorry, I don't have a business card. Follow me on Instagram. Let's have coffee. And so all I'm doing is like building relationships because that's how I think I am getting hired, at least for me. And I know some people like thrive on maybe social media or behind like their portfolio or whatever. But for me, it's the relationships and it's worked really well.
I think like you have the portfolio to back it up once they do get to know you. I think all of it's like equally important. And so but I think like I agree. Most clients find me from my relationships at this point. Like if I wanted to just only pay to go to conferences and not do any other marketing, that would be perfectly doable for my business because I only book 5 to 6 weddings a year and most of them are coming from vendors that I get to know really well through these outlets, So
really, even as a planner?
Yeah. Yeah, most of mine, like I meet a lot of venue. For me, when I go, so like say, like we've been to an Engage together, and we go to a ton of different conferences. So I don't even want to just single out one, but just as an example, like when I go into an Engage, I have a very different goal in mind to connect. I'm sure you're looking to connect with planners and venues, and you can share that, but I'm always looking at the venue partners because that's where a lot of our referrals come from.
Cool.
Because they are, they're the front.
Yeah.
They're right up there with the planner, right? Like they're the front. And then sometimes my photographers do refer me because maybe they've had a couple following them forever and they knew they wanted to book them first. And then they say, you have to hire Renee and Ashley. So I think that all of the relationships are important, but I definitely have I think the conferences have really helped me. And then also just people that I do work with year to year, just nurturing those relationships. So yeah.
For you, the venue is the gatekeeper. I think it's very interesting to think about who the gatekeepers are in your world.
For you, is it like the venue and the planner?
Yeah, usually the planner is the gatekeeper to the clients. And so it's funny. So before Engage and these conferences, my clients were like directly the couple, and they would hire me directly, and there probably was no planner, and I would help them build a timeline and do stuff. But after going to Engage and starting to step into that luxury world, I realized that my client is no longer that person who pays me, but the planner who can give me those people, because the planner has the power and they might be able to give me 3 to 5 weddings a year, and that person, that's like an evergreen source. That's pretty valuable to me. So finding the gatekeepers, even if it's the secretary to the planner, who's the gatekeeper to the client, that those are the people that you don't want to kiss up to, but it's just important to remember that they have power,
Yeah. And I think it's like mutually beneficial. I bring venues business as well. And so we just never know year to year, but I love that. Find your gatekeeper and hone in on making sincere, authentic connections with them. And I really love that. But you know what? That actually makes me think, the other benefits too of going to these conferences is the learning aspect, like you were just saying. And I feel like you have a unique perspective because you also speak and you learn at conferences. So what do you get out of, going to these conferences in terms of education? And then do you go for the education? That's a question I get a lot from people.
Yeah.
And then also, how did you get into speaking yourself?
I mean, so I never go for the education. and
the honest truth. I love it.
I know, but it's not because I think I know it all. It's just sort of
it's not the goal.
I've gone to probably 100 conferences in the last 6 years, and or I don't know, that's not true. Maybe so many, 50 to 80 conferences. And it's a lot of, how do I want to say this? I think your life will be changed not by something that's said on stage, but by a conversation you'll have in the corner when you get to talk specifically about what it is that's going on in your business. And I say this as an ex-teacher. Teaching to a classroom of 30 is not the ideal way to learn as a student. It's one-on-one, because everybody learns a little differently and everybody's situation is different, and personality and stage of life and where they're at. And so it's tricky for someone to go on stage and be like, you know what? I found all my success on LinkedIn, and LinkedIn is an untapped resource that no one in the wedding industry is using. And here's what you should do. It kind of, but LinkedIn might not work in Ohio or whatever, or just people, and so it's really hard to capture. And the other part too is when people leave conferences, it's very easy to get inspired, and it's extremely hard to find time to work on your business and implement change. We go right back to our old habits, our old lives, our full emails. And I have every intention to make changes and do stuff in my business, but it's just not happening after a conference. I don't know. It just doesn't happen. So for me, the value of the conferences is the relationships, for sure.
Yeah. And I appreciate your honesty with it, because I do think I get that question so much. And I'm a mixed bag. I find that I get more out of the education when it's a much smaller focused workshop or a mastermind or something that I intentionally sought out to learn about a specific thing.
Yeah.
And then from my mentors that I hire one-on-one. So I feel if I don't go to the conference necessarily for the education. I might be excited to meet like and hear the speaker talk. It's a little bit more like inspirational and motivational than it is like I'm going to write my notes and get things out of it.
Yeah.
But that's like at a bigger conference. But the smaller ones, like I just spoke in Vermont yesterday and it was an awesome group, 125 people. They were feverishly writing. I was so honored. And I feel like those smaller, little like more targeted like things can help with if you're looking for like actual education, I guess, you know?
That's nice. Yeah.
Yeah.
Congratulations.
Oh, thank you. Well, back to you though. So for the speaker front, like how have you, I feel like you've evolved so much with this industry and like you do speak at conferences. Like, has that brought a lot of joy? You're kind of like infusing your teaching background and photography. I like love that.
Yeah. I guess one thing we haven't talked about at all, and I think it's important for everybody to have is like a personal mission statement maybe, or like a, why are you here on earth kind of, you know,
I love that. Your why.
And for me, yeah, I've thought about this a lot growing up, and I grew up like super Christian and really involved with like youth group stuff and youth in general. And I always felt like my mission was to mentor others. Yeah. And that's sort of evolved into like a broader statement, which is I do believe that my purpose and my mission is to inspire others. And it's to inspire others to think bigger than themselves, to like to think positively or upward or to growth. And so photography, sometimes I actually always, if you've ever had your picture taken by me, you will leave inspired. If you've ever had a one-on-one conversation with me, you will certainly leave inspired. But so my goal on stage also fulfills a little bit of that feeling of like inspiring people outside of me. And hopefully when I'm on stage, I'm not trying to teach some agenda or anything. I just want people to like think like, oh, that's something else is possible that I didn't think was possible.
Yeah. I actually like feel like that at the basis is like the good of these education and speaking engagements. Like that's also why I love doing it too. And it does, it helps you in the long run. Like people, you know, see you as an industry expert, but at the end of the day, it's like people remember how you make them feel. And so I love that. Yeah.
So I want to leave people inspired, and I like being on stage is two-part. Like it feeds my ego definitely, and I do like to be seen.
You're so honest. I know, me too. I'm a Leo. I like love a good microphone.
Yeah. So that's why I'm here right now. You know, I like to be seen. And I like a little bit of that like brand recognition for my personal self, but I also I truly do want to like change people's lives, and I'd love to be known that way in the industry.
That's awesome. That's your legacy. That's what you're leaving. So I love that.
I'm side note, we can move on from this, but I'm finding that I think I'm actually not like a great keynote speaker. Like I'm fine just doing like a lecture from the audience, but I love these conversations like you and I are having, or like a fireside chat. And I'm a really good facilitator. So I could lead like a panel of 5 and keep it like snappy and funny and like not boring. And I think that's a really interesting art form. And I love the art of like conversation and facilitation. So that's what I love most.
I think that's awesome. And it is a talent because it talked about a lot in the speaker circle. You know, not everyone can moderate a panel or be that person that facilitates the breakouts, or, you know, they'd rather just be up on the stage. And, you know, I think that's a huge asset, you know, because again, people get to know you through all these different ways that you're doing that.
Yeah. So anyways, I like that. And also I'm a leader, but I think I like to lead from behind, you know? So I like to like almost Oprah style, like prop other people up and like put a spotlight on other people is like more interesting to me than putting a spotlight on myself. But I still want to be on stage, but I don't need the whole spotlight. Yeah. You know?
It's just a nice balance, right? Yeah. I love that. No, it's awesome. I love all the work you're doing with it. And okay, well, of course, I can't have you forever, although we wish we could, but I want to move us on because I can't wait for people to hear a little bit more about you. So as part of my podcast, like everyone knows, this is my favorite question. I've asked it ever since 2018, but I really want to close the gap between like wedding professionals. And so I asked like all my guests this next question. What do you wish other vendors knew? Like if you had one thing that would help the community?
Yeah.
You can be totally raw, brutally honest.
No, it's not like a criticism. I'm thinking about like what I wish I knew when I was younger, starting up, is that like I think for a long time I thought my value was based on my skill set, like my talent. And this is a weird, like controversial thing to say maybe, but like we all know that at the highest level, what you are worth has nothing to do really with what you do. There's like planners who are charging a lot of money and who are hot messes, you know, but but their brand is strong and they're able to do it, you know? And so it's an interesting thing if you are younger and figuring out your pricing and your value to fight back against this idea that like, oh, in order to charge more, I need to do more. That is not that's not true. And it's just not how the world works, actually. Like in order to charge more, people simply need to believe that you are worth more. And it has nothing to do with like how good of a photographer you are, how good of a planner you are. There's a little smoke and mirrors in that sentence, but like I ideally you can like back it up with substance. But I wish people, and I wish I had known earlier, like to go from $50 an hour to $100 an hour doesn't mean I'm like shooting twice as much or offering twice as much. It just means that like I am good and I can deliver good and the price is almost arbitrary. And that's kind of crazy to realize. I don't know. That's something.
I think that might be one of my favorite, you know, what you wish other vendors knew on this podcast, because I think we get so far into our head and like so many professionals struggle with this. I've struggled with it. There's just so much competition, but like if you're just uniquely yourself and find what that value is that you bring to people, I agree. Sometimes the actual service that you're providing isn't really the reason people are dying to work with you. And it's a win-win because once they hire you, you get to do that service and you love it. But you know, I like to think like a lot of my clients, they hire me because I have a very welcoming, you know, personality and I can bring a lot of calm to the chaos. They don't usually ask me like, have you worked in this venue? Like, what is your, you know, they assume that already, right? It's not what's like drawing them in. So I don't know. I love that. That was a good one. Thank you. Yeah. Okay. And then my next question for you, if you could give us, I just love people getting to know you. So if you have a confetti hour confession for us.
Yeah, this is a funny one. Some people know this if you know me well, but most don't, is that I've never had a beer. I've never been drunk. I've never smoked weed. I've never done cocaine. I basically am like super straight edge and have done almost nothing my entire life. So I'm not a drinker and I don't do anything.
I actually did. Well, I mean, I learned that about you quickly because being at these conferences, there's obviously like a ton of drinking going on. And I like my bubbly, so Phil knows that I do like to drink. But I think there's like time and place. So I just like love I love that you feel so confident and you don't need those things for it to bring richness to your life. And I think that you're just like very strong to me knowing that about yourself. I think a lot of people don't like, they like try those things because they're just like kind of lost, I guess. And we're trying to figure it out. Like I drink wine because I enjoy wine. I like it. But I've had to learn my balance with that too. And if I didn't like it, I just wouldn't do it. So that's what I like that you have just always stayed true to yourself, I guess, you know?
Yeah. So that's all.
That's a good confession.
I'm confess I've never had a drink like that.
You've never even tried a drink?
I've sipped wine, I have to say, like, but or like sometimes champagne at a wedding, if there's a toast or something, I'll do like one sip, but I've never had like a full anything.
Yeah. You don't need it. You're so happy. You'll probably wake up a lot lighter than a lot of us. So like your mental capacity is better. It's actually my goal this year is probably to like not drink as much at conferences because I don't know. I don't like thinking fuzzy in the morning. And as I get older, it's like hurting more. So I can have like a glass of wine or two, but I don't need to like, you know, go out till 2 a.m. and have bottles. So
maybe it sounds like you have a lot of fun.
I do have fun, but I think there's like, depends on not at conferences though. I think that's what I've learned. Like, because it's hard not to get carried away with those things. You know what I mean?
So that's like another, like a mini
it's a hard industry. Yeah.
There's a mini conference tip in there though, because there's others that also don't drink. You just don't know it, So if you're someone who feels like you gotta party, you gotta do it all like that, I promise there are people who went to bed early, who are at the gym in the morning, and you just don't see it.
So many people. I switch out, or I'll do every other. Like I use a sparkling water with a lime, and people think I'm drinking, But it's just so that I don't get the questions like, "Why aren't you drinking?" Like I don't really care. It's just annoying,
Yeah.
But no, I love that.
Yeah.
Well, as we bring the episode to the end, I've loved this conversation, and I can't thank you enough for being on the podcast. But of course, like before we go, I want to hear like, what are you excited about for the future? Like, what do you have coming up that you can't wait for?
That's my favorite question, actually. What are you excited about? I have one last big wedding in Vail this year, and I'm super excited. It's with one of my favorite planners out there, Jennifer Pletcher from Gemini Events, and
nice.
And I got asked to photograph on the team for Engage. So we've been talking about this conference, and I'll be shooting the next one in Boca Raton in December.
Oh my goodness, love it.
Yeah, and then I'm excited to just be home in Santa Barbara the first week of the year, where I get to truly just like be in the palm trees and see my friends and family and have like smoothies and kind of live that California life a little bit.
I love that. That would be so nice. You deserve it after a long year of attending, 16 conferences and working tons of events and weddings. But, I love it. Well, I have really enjoyed this conversation, like I said, and I can't wait for people to like tune in and just get to know you better. But where can they find you, like on social media and the interwebs?
Yeah, I'm pretty much everywhere at Phillip VN. That's PhillipVN. V as in Victor, N as in Nancy, and that's it. Phillip VN Weddings, phillipvn.com, and if you just type that in, I'll show up.
Yeah, I'll link all this down below, of course, and hopefully you'll get to meet Phillip when you go to a conference.
Yay! I'll be there.
Yay! Awesome. Thank you so much.